Hello, Andre. We are testing sound. We will begin in 1 minute.
And we have started recording.
We will start in 1 minute.
Mr. Lyimo, you may begin.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Global Reading Network's second round webinar for May. After looking at the global perspective regarding e-materials and technology in the Global Reading Network's first May webinar, in which speakers from World Reader, Bratham Books, and the Asia Foundation presented programs from the organizations, this second round webinar for May will examine opportunities and challenges for e-materials in early grade reading in the countries of India and Zambia. For this webinar, we are happy we have two speakers and two discussants. Our first speaker is Carrie Lewis. For over 25 years, Carrie Lewis has been designing, implementing, and managing programs that improve access to quality education domestically and internationally, primarily in Africa. She is currently Senior Project Director for EDC-Zambia, an expert in early education, literacy, and teacher professional development. Lewis' work fed into the creation of e-learning materials in Zambia, and she continues to be part of EDC's efforts to design programs that are both context relevant and sustainable. She is currently involved in studying early grade reading in community schools and implementing early childhood and early grade reading programs in Africa. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you, Lyimo.
Our next presenter is Nagaraju Pappu. Nagaraju Pappu is Chief Learning Scientist at EkStep. He has 23 years of experience as a computer scientist and software architect. He was also the chief architect of one of the largest e-learning platforms in India for higher education. Apart from his experience in software, architecture, and the learning sciences, he is also an expert in Indian language linguistics and cultural theories of language learning. Prior to EkStep, Nagaraju was the founder of Chief Architect at Canopus Consulting, a high-end consulting firm that specialized in large-scale software architecture, and he was also the co-founder of Lyimo, a next-generation MOOC platform. Welcome, Nagaraju.
Thank you.
As I have said, we have two discussants. Our first discussant is Brij Kothari. Brij Kothari is an academic and a social entrepreneur. He is on the faculty of IMA Ahmedabad, and he is the founder of Planet Read and BookBox, dedicated to scalable solutions for literacy and language learning. At IIM and the Planet Read, Brij and his team have innovated, researched, and implemented same language subtitling on television for mass literacy. Brij is an Ashoka Fellow of Stewart Social Entrepreneur and was Reuters in Digital Version Fellow at Stanford University. Welcome, Brij. Our second discussant is Anthony Bloome. Anthony Bloome is the Senior Education Technology Specialist at USAID. He has worked as a distance education specialist at USAID since 2009, where he provides technical advice to HQ missions and counterpart agencies regarding the appropriate use of technology to support quality education outcomes in developing countries. He is the campaign director for All Children Reading a grand challenge for development, a global competition to catalyze innovations to advance early grade reading, and is the founder of the Mobile in Education Alliance, an international stakeholder initiative designed to evaluate and dramatically accelerate the scalable utilization of appropriate technology to support education. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you.
Once again, I welcome all speakers and participants at this webinar. Before we begin, I would like to remind our speakers that if you are not speaking and your mic is on, we will ask you to mute your mic so that to avoid background noises to participants. For all participants, if we have a technology question, you will type in the chat box and we will address it as soon as possible. If it is a question to the speakers, type them in question and answers box. We will gather them and address them at the end. So we will begin by hearing presentation from Carrie. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you. Thank you, Lyimo. Thank you for the introduction. So am I, are you putting up the presentation or am I?
You are.
Okay.
Morning, Carrie. This is Andre at ERC. Just go to Share, Application, PowerPoint.
Right, right.
Good, we can see you.
Okay, great. Okay, so I want to first thank the organizers of the e-learning webinar at URC. I'm going to bring this down here. Okay. For inviting Education Development Center to contribute to the discussion of advances in e-learning around the world. And I'd also like to thank USAID for funding projects such as Time to Learn in Zambia, which has allowed us to introduce and pilot the tools in Zambia. Time to Learn is or was a community school project that focused on improving reading achievement among some of the most vulnerable and hard-to-reach students. Community schools have answered that call for communities to have access to education, and Time to Learn focused on improving the quality of education and the literacy instruction in a very diverse subset of schools. I'm not moving ahead. So here are 3 e-learning tools that we'll cover today. All of these have been rolled out in Zambia between 2012 and 2017. And all are geared toward improving reading in the classroom. Each is geared toward a different audience because literacy instruction comes out of opportunities for children to practice reading and practice skills, for teachers to collect information on student progress and then plan accordingly, and then for coaches to work directly with teachers. And all of this is within a context of community schools that are typically low-resourced with high turnover. So the first tool is eEGRA Instruct, a digital early grade assessment and instructional program. Stepping Stone, which is a mobile learning tool for literacy teaching and Vernacular. Vernacular is the third one. It's a student e-learning program used to practice reading and reading skill building. So these are 3 tools for 3 devices to address reading, teaching of reading, planning, literacy lessons, and practice. So let's look at the first tool, which is eEGRA Instruct. eEGRA Instruct changes literacy data collection from a process of country reporting to a tool that's used to improve reading at the classroom level. It teaches teachers how to formatively evaluate and also teaches them the value of formative assessment in literacy instruction, shifting the mindset from evaluation for results to one of evaluation for teaching practice. So it's a simplified version of eEGRA. So we've simplified the administration for teachers to feel comfortable enough to use the technology. understand the items and be able to understand the link between the data, the information that they're getting, the evaluation of students, and then the practice that students need to engage in. It's immediate, so teachers don't have to wait for the results that come from an outside evaluator to talk to them about a practice that they may have engaged in months earlier. And it also links students' instructional needs to targeted exercise, which is a very important part of eEGRA Instruct. So how does this happen? Let's take a look at, this is a screenshot of what happens after conducting a test using eEGRA Instruct. So the results analysis shows up in a table form or graph form, and it lets you compare results from different testing periods. If you can see, and this is a little bit hard to see, I know. We'll have a subsequent slide that's a little bit clearer, but we've got results from January and results from June, so the teacher can track progress. And then what I wanted to highlight is that there's an instructional advice button. So if you see up in the upper left-hand corner, there's a blue section, but in the bottom right of that, it says instructional advice. And what would happen is that the teacher would push that button and they come up with this page. So I'm just going to toggle back. You see that there are bars in the lower right-hand side, and then he or she presses the button and then gets this message. So if the students are having difficulty in one area of reading instruction, and this says that they're having difficulty in listening comprehension, they should go to these activities. And this assumes that the teachers have a guide, which they've been trained in, trained to use, trained to understand the activities, and also trained to understand that the guide links with eEGRA Instruct. They go to that guide and they have activities that they can use with students to practice that particular skill. So it's just slightly better to see. There's the activities. So looking at the next e-learning tool, we have Stepping Stone, which is a mobile learning offline professional development tool. It's content that's loaded onto phones, onto mobile phones. It's a simple and easy to use phone that's meant to be familiar with a wide range of users. And just go here. We've got different uses for the mLearning tool. On the phones, we've loaded different things, videos that show best practices for teachers, examples of how to form sounds, resources for creating low-cost, no-cost materials in the classroom, and activities for students to engage in. I wanted to highlight one of the features of the phone. This is the picture of the phone, easy to use. And on the left, we've recorded sounds for teachers to understand how to pronounce and how to have students repeat the pronunciation. So I'm going to play this. And what you're going to hear, what you're going to see pop up is a very complex quadruple consonant blend. And you'll see that the consonant blend is on the left, and then there's a video of the mouth, lips, and teeth of the speaker on the right. I'll play it a few times for you to hear the consonant blend. It's a little bit breathy, so a little bit difficult to hear, but you'll see the idea behind it. Hopefully. So you see the consonant blend here, and then the teacher's lips, teeth, and tongue, and the sound of the consonant blend. And teachers use this so that they can correct themselves, but they also use it in the classroom, holding it up for students so they can repeat the sounds and make the correct pronunciation. So we recorded every sound blend in 3 languages in videos like this, and these clips help teachers to hear the sound, see the lips, read the letters at the same time. And they can pull this out of their pocket, repeat it on demand. And that's something that's just not possible through any other training method. So we've identified several challenges to improve reading skills and some possible solutions. So we know that teachers need tools, and in the situation in the context of Zambia in community school teachers are often volunteer teachers that have limited education, little to no training, and the mother tongue resources are very limited. The mother tongue policy is fairly new, and resources have yet to reach many of the community schools. And so to answer those challenges, we've developed eEGRA Instruct so that we can help teachers in the classroom, not only the training that we've been able to provide as a part of Time to Learn, but to have tools in the classroom so that teachers can follow up on what they've learned during training. We have the M-Learning mobile technology that is in the teacher's pocket that helps them as a co-teacher in the classroom. So if we can look at the last e-learning tool, which is what we've been calling Vernacular. It's an app maker, requires no programming skill, and it allows you to design different apps for practice in the classroom. It's perfect for low-skill teachers. The software provides the correct letter sounds, immediate and corrective feedback, and then encouragement. So imagine there are different games, different exercises, little stories that you could read on these tablets. And in the games and in the exercises, students engage with it. You have up to 4 students around a tablet, and they attempt an answer, and then when they attempt to answer, if it's correct, the black and white picture that's on the screen pops up as in color, giving them the encouragement to show them, yes, they're correct. So there's a library of activity templates that are on in the Vernacular program that allows you to make a variety of apps to teach different skill components. And some of the activities that I'm not showing here include encoding skills and story reading. So here is an example of what a page would look like in the tablet. Very clear, simple, easy to understand. On the left, you've got term 1 activities, which are initial letter sounds, initial word sounds. And on the right, you have a term 2 activity, which is sound blends. We were able to test this pilot of Vernacular in a small study over 6 months in Lusaka province. And what we did is we had 3 different options. We had a technology tablet-based schools. We had workbook-based schools, which used the same exact activities that were loaded onto the tablet. And then we had control schools that didn't receive the intervention. And after the period, you can see that the growth in words correct per minute among the tablet schools far exceeded the workbook schools as compared to the control group. And then on the right, you see the growth in comprehension. Still, the tablet group outpaced the workbook group compared to the control group, which is interesting because in the test, we did not include the reading app, which tells us that those language mechanics that students are getting out of the tablet use are gelling into increased ability to comprehend text. So we have a little bit about effect size. So effect size is a measure of the difference between 2 groups that takes into consideration the amount of dispersion in a sample. And education researchers suggest that effect sizes in education are, a large effect size would be 0.25, a medium effect size would be 0.15, and a small effect size would be 0.05. So you can see that, again, the tablet group over the workbook group had a larger effect size over the control. So let's take a look at cost. We have some assumptions that we've got $40 tablets. The tablets are shared across 4 classrooms. and the tablets are used for 3 years with a 15% replacement rate after year 1 and a larger replacement rate, 25% after year 2. So for every $10 that's spent on ICT as compared to the $10 spent on paper, so we've got ICT at the top purple bar, paper at the bottom, you get better outcomes under letters correct per minute, better outcomes under nonsense words correct per minute using the tablet, and better outcomes under oral reading fluency for every $10 spent over the workbook group. I'm just gonna, I know that time is short. So again, looking back at the challenges and the solutions, one of the challenges that we notice is that in classrooms, learners need to practice. They need practice and they need feedback. And when you have large class sizes, it doesn't allow for individualized instruction. And we know that like I said before, mother tongue resources are limited. So the vernacular provides you the opportunity in the classroom to have early grade practice and a loop of practice, feedback, correction, encouragement, that's not there. And then you can add new languages into the vernacular program. We currently have 3 languages. There are 7 recognized languages in Zambia, and those can be added in over time. So there you have it, the 3 instructional tools that we've covered. All have been rolled out in Zambia, eEGRA and Stepping Stone at scale. Actually, the Ministry of Education has rolled out training on Stepping Stone at their own cost. We provided the technical assistance, and then vernacular in a pilot. They express our work at Education Development Center as we continue to look for large-scale solutions that meet the needs of very specific populations. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for the great presentation. And now we would like to welcome Nagaraju to present us experience from India as far as e-learning materials in early grade marketing is concerned. Welcome, Nagaraju. Pappu, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Yeah. Share my screen.
Doing it. He's there.
Hello, good morning, all of you. I hope you can see my screen. I work as a chief learning scientist at EkStep. I thank the panelists and the group for making me for this presentation. It's a great honor. I work at EkStep. EkStep is a not-for-profit foundation which is set up specifically to improve literacy and numeracy by increasing access to learning opportunities for 200 million children in the next 5 years. EkStep is a not-for-profit which is set up by the same group which has developed the world's largest biometric identity system for India called Aadhaar, which is now the identity has reached close to 1 billion people. So this is a group and team that knows how to develop and take to people very, very large-scale societal platforms. So we are now, our mission is now to reach to 200 million children and increase access to learning opportunities. So I'm going to discuss about some of the language learning issues, especially at early grade in India, and how we are looking at them. So let me first provide a bit of a context on the kind of complexity of language learning in the Indian context, because it poses very unique challenges. One, we have hundreds and hundreds of living languages, close to 445, with 15 official languages and 120 tribal languages. And there are multiple scripts that are very complex to learn. In fact, some languages don't even have a script, so they're only learned orally, and some scripts are currently being designed. And third is that Indian languages are very, very highly morphological. That means that our sentence structures do not have a fixed syntactical structure. For example, in English, we say Tom is a good boy. In Indian languages, we very much say boy, Tom, good, and which is actually grammatically correct. So it's actually all, the correctness comes from the way that the words actually end or the words change. So for example, a same base verb in Indian language may have close to 800 different variations in the way that we actually speak, which actually poses certain interesting challenges for early reading and learning. So that is the language complexity. Now let's look at the geographical and cultural complexities. There are many demographic and the same language tends to change at least every 50 to 100 kilometers in the way it is spoken, and some of the words change. Same objects may have different words, or same words may have different meanings.
Mr. Pappu, I
yes?
beg your pardon. This is Lynn in D.C. We're getting some feedback from you. Are you by any chance talking to us through a speakerphone?
Yes.
Is there some way you can take us off of speakerphone and talk to us directly through the, even if you have to do it?
Is it better now?
Well, talk to me a little bit more.
Hello?
Yes, that is better. That is better.
Yeah.
Could you continue with your presentation in that sound mode, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So yeah. So what I was talking about is the complexity of language learning situation in India. There are many languages. Official languages themselves are about 15. There are 170 tribal languages. Some languages don't even have a script, and there are multiple scripts. And Indian languages are very morphological in nature. It's a slightly complex linguistic term, so let me explain what it means. The grammar of Indian languages is not based on fixed syntax. Unlike, let's say, in English, we say Tom is a good boy. In Indian languages, you can say boy, Tom, good, which is grammatically correct. But the grammar comes from the way that the words change. The form of the word changes in the sentence. So, for example, a base verb may have close to 800 different variations in the way that we actually speak it. That's the kind of the language complexity even that has to be mastered at an early age. And now let's look at the demographic and geographical complexities. See, the language varies every 50 kilometers in India, even the same language. Sometimes the words have but different meanings, or the objects may have different words. So unlike in English, even developing something like a threshold vocabulary poses certain unique challenges. And when we are actually talking about e-learning materials, there is a maturity of digital tools as well. For example, the availability of digital dictionaries, the availability of say speech-to-text conversions, the availability of fonts. So these are all actually issues that one has to deal with. And to give you an idea of the complexity that we deal with here, India prints close to 1 billion textbooks for the primary grade up to primary learning every year. So that's the kind of complexity that we are looking at. And we have two kinds of literacy in India. One is the oral literacy, and another is the graphic literacy. Traditionally, because this culture is an oral culture, you may be an expert in a language but not be able to read it. And there are many people in India who are like that, even poets and great scholars. Know a language very well, but they don't know how to read a script. Even for me, for example, I know Hindi very well, but I cannot read that script very fluently. Or conversely, one may be able to read a script very fluently without actually understanding anything about it, because two languages may share a same script, but as languages they are very different. And traditionally, our alphabet system was phonetically organized about 3,000 years ago. And it is adapted for writing in about 3rd century BC. So our writing system is actually a very phonetically organized system, and I'll show you a couple of examples of that. And then graphic literacy is when we actually start to read and write a language as in the modern literacy terms. So let's say a child, even a first language learner, who comes to the school to learn language, So when you start to write a language, it actually becomes a little bit more formal. The way that you speak is not the way that you write. So therefore, sentence formation, pronunciation, word modifiers tend to be different when writing. And interestingly, vocabularies that are used in daily usage may not necessarily get used in textbooks. So there may be changes there also, which poses certain challenges in when a child moves from home to a school. And there are social contexts also influence the early grade reading, because you see, India is a highly migrant country. There are people who always move from villages and towns to the cities. So many non-native speakers in today's urban schools are treated like first language learners, but their mother tongues are different. So the textbooks and curriculums do not take into account the non-native migrant speakers, that they probably don't know this language, have not learned this language as a first language. And social backgrounds influence the vocabulary even for a first language learner, because depending on the economic, social, cultural background that one comes from, the vocabulary, the pronunciation, the density of the vocabulary usage, the kind of sentences that are spoken actually change. So therefore, it actually is impossible to design textbooks covering all demographics and cultures. Now, let me actually walk you through the kind of the script challenges that a child has to go through. So on the left side, you see two symbols here. So the first symbol is a word for three. I'm actually saying three consonants here: sta, ta, ra, and a vowel called e. All of them graphically are color coded here. The blue one is the base consonant sa. The black one here you see the semicircular one is ra. The one that looks like inverted 6 is ta, and the green one is a vowel symbol. And the right one is a very similar sounding Sri, but it's actually a different syllable altogether. And there are close to about 570 such symbols, even for basic reading, that a child has to master. And to complicate matters further, we have very, very similar looking letters with very slight changes, which actually sound very different. For example, the one on the right side, left side is da, the one on the left side is tha. So syllables that look very similar, but actually we have produced different sounds. So this is something that a child by the grade 2 has to master all of this. That poses certain challenges. So in the studies that we have done, so if the, for example, if the child may know the language already, but when it comes to reading, if the complexity increases, if the reading complexity increases, then the number of words that the child can speak drastically reduce. As you can see, it can go from 84 words per minute to 36 words per minute. So there's a kind of challenges that exist, especially in the script challenges. Now let me talk about the comprehension challenges. So I said that Indian languages are highly morphological in nature, so they're very, very highly inflectional. For us, our language, everything is in the verb for us. The verb is the sentence. That is, our verb captures the gender, it captures the number, it captures the case, and it even captures the mood. So therefore, a verb may be taking close to 800 different variations on the way that you actually write in the same sentence. So therefore, understanding and usage of the verb is the key in early learning, because if you know how to use the verb, then your comprehension of the language actually increases. So this is another challenge that we have. So there's the basic issues about early grade learning among many that I captured. Now let me talk about the opportunities that this country provides. One is that moving away from desktop-oriented systems to tablets and smartphones. A desktop is primarily a reading writing device because it's a very, very literate device. You have to type into it, you have to read into it. That's how it actually is built. But whereas today smartphones and tablets are primarily listening, speaking, and interaction devices, and every child knows how to use them. So in fact, it's much more natural to learn a language from a smartphone than from a desktop. And so India is a country which is there's an exponential growth of smartphones and internet and especially Indian language content. So there is a growth of close to 200 million smartphones that are added, and we expect to add another 200 million in the next 5 years. And there's rising disposable income, and the mobile charges are actually are going down, so which are actually increasing opportunities for digital literacy, and therefore powering new avenues for literacy through digital means as well. So that's another thing. So therefore, if one is building e-learning materials in India today, you would want to build for mobile first and not for desktop first. So what kind of stuff that we can do? Number one, as I spoke about, because of interactive devices, and there are a lot of content creation tools open up new avenues. For example, supplemental and intervention materials, there is a great opportunity in building them. As I spoke, even for first language learners, graphic literacy is an issue. Migrant learners actually come to schools and the textbooks are not designed for migrant learners. So there is an enormous need for supplemental and intervention materials. Huge NGO organizations like Discussant actually work in that space. And then there's a need to build very effective and efficient assessment tools and solutions, because assessing on a pen and paper, especially your pronunciation skills, whether you got a script correctly or not, is actually a major issue, and digital tools offer ready-made and very effective ways of actually building assessments. And then a simple means like audio and recording and playbacking, record and playback of the child's voice. With respect to, let's say, a recorded voice or a teacher's voice, we have seen that increases the pronunciation abilities tremendously. So those are actually capabilities that you would want to build. And something like interactive storybooks that engage both the child and the parent are another opportunity. So what EkStep is doing is that if you think of YouTube, let's say, as a platform for video-based content distribution, see, videos tend to be very static learning objects, and EkStep today offers a platform for anybody to build and make very easily, highly interactive learning content. And EkStep is open source and free to use for anybody. So what are we looking at? So we are actually looking at reimagining language learning in India. So the three ways we can approach it. One, we can train 20 million teachers to become super teachers. Not exactly an easily solvable problem. Or we can let technology own child's learning. I mean, we can put up highly personalized gaming solutions and it takes over the child's learning context, which also is very, very difficult because of all the complexities that I mentioned. Or we can probably look at something like an Iron Man solution where we give simple tools that enable the society to solve its problems. So we're actually looking at, can 400 million adults participate in child's education rather than, say, a million teachers? So that's the kind of tools and platform that EkStep today offers. And it's already adopted by close, it's acted as a base infrastructure, education infrastructure by the government of India. And 4 state governments are already using this platform for developing their e-content. And some of the largest non-governmental organizations in India like Pratham, Akshara, Leap for Learn, and many others are using this platform for their digital initiatives. And we hope to reach close to 100 million children in the next 2 years. So it's a platform that's open source, free to use, the rich APIs to create interactive content, and more importantly, the data API, the entire telemetry data is available for analytics, so we can make open decisions, insights, and analytics. Thank you.
Thank you, Nagaraju, for your great presentation. And now I welcome Brij Kothari to discuss for 10 minutes the 2 presentations and to give his views on e-materials on early-grade reading. Welcome. Welcome, Brij.
Yeah, hi. Well, firstly, thank you so much to both presenters. I thought there were some really, very, very interesting ideas. Let me start with Carrie's presentation first. So what I really liked, I guess in eEGRA was this seamless blending of assessment and practice, which is targeted, and the instruction. I thought that's an idea that can certainly scale, that can certainly go to other countries, and I've seen that in other spaces, like for example, maybe all of you are familiar with this, but Duolingo does a version of that for language learning where they combine all three, diagnostics and practice and instruction. And I thought something of that nature can really scale, and I'm wondering whether eEGRA and Duolingo have something to learn from each other. So certainly Duolingo doesn't serve the languages that Carrie is working with, I think, but there are probably gaming features in Duolingo that probably could inform eEGRA. That's one thought I had. My question a little bit was around dependency for eEGRA. I thought the less dependence on commercial tools or technology that is expensive, of course, would be a positive move. For example, I read in one of the slides that eEGRA is programmed into MS Office. Again, MS Office is not easily affordable by many people. And it has a bit of a tablet or it has a bit of a netbook dependency. So I was wondering, and maybe this is already happening and has happened, but I was wondering if this entire eEGRA tool can migrate to mobile phones, and that's because I looked up a little bit on Zambia. And it does seem like there's a fair bit of mobile penetration. 75% people have access to mobiles today, and of course they're not smartphones yet, but that's probably going to happen as compared to much less computer and tablet penetration. On Stepping Stone, almost on all the three tools I had really good things. Stepping Stone, I like the idea of supporting teachers, and my question there, I guess it wasn't clear to me, and probably you may have already said it, but who's producing that content on the platform? I assume it's teachers who are then sharing the platform offline, of course, on the mobile phones. And in this context, the work of Rikin Gandhi in India of Digital Green comes to mind. He's, of course, used video produced by farmers and has a way to kind of share across farming communities their best practices. So a little bit more like a farmer-to-farmer communication platform, which is Digital Green, and I think that perhaps Stepping Stone and Digital Green have something to learn from each other as well. The app maker I thought was really fascinating for me personally, because it allows people to add their own languages, which is I think again a principle that I think can go forward in certainly Carrie's work and probably also in Pappu's work. Is that crowdsourcing of activity development by people who speak the language, because I don't think institutions will provide that kind of diversity easily. It'll have to be people generating their own content in their own languages. And on Vernacular, I had a question around are children able to also make these activities? I wasn't clear whether teacher were going to make this, because it's an app maker at some level. You provide inputs like pictures and voice, and then the app kind of magically creates itself, or the activity kind of creates itself, which I thought was really a nice idea. And I'm just wondering if it's easy enough for children to produce their own activities. And then and I think I had just had a little bit of a comment on the cost estimates. It would be useful for me personally to know what would be the cost, let's say, to get a child who's reading at grade 1 level to get that child to grade 2 level. and it's just more intuitive for me, or maybe even for policymakers to understand. I'm going to move a little bit to EkStep in India. I think, Pappu, you painted really well the challenges and the complexity of Indian languages, and also the opportunities that exist now in terms of mobile and internet penetration that is rapidly increasing under a very, very open policy climate right now for digital technologies. But I would have liked personally to hear a little bit more about the EkStep platform, and perhaps, and I have many questions around that. For example, the vision is of course clear: 200 million children, getting learning opportunities in the next 5 years, or 100 million in the next 2 years, as you said. And I did poke around a little bit on the EkStep platform, and I found it's quite populated now with people generating their activities. But the numbers and the scale are almost on two different planets right now, 200 million and 100 million. And then what I'm seeing is the uptake right now, at least, of the activities is generally, I would say, in the early thousands. So there is a bit of a mismatch in my own understanding a little bit on how this is going to scale to the extent that you have anticipated or envisioned. On the complexity of language, I just want to point out a little bit our own experience with this. At some level, Indian languages are complex, but at some level, they're also, in fact, Indian languages are easier to learn to read in than English. English is, of course, unpredictable in pronunciation, and Indian languages, generally, there's a fairly good mapping of symbols to sound. So I was a little surprised that it was seen as very complex to learn to read. Our experience has been that in Indian languages, there's a minimum or a small set of the most common syllables. If you learn those, and then if you have enough exposure and practice somehow, which is where a lot of my work at least is, what we found is that minimum set grows almost intuitively. And I think somewhere it's not about us or teaching people to learn the entire syllable set, but just a minimum. So our experience is that 5 letters of the Hindi alphabet, let's say somebody knows, and that can be learned pretty much in less than a week. If that child gets a lot of exposure to those 5 letters, and then the 6th and the 7th, and it keeps building from there, in generally something that they already do, which is, for example, watch a lot of movies, etc., then that set tends to grow and people learn quite fast, intuitively. Just like children learn languages, we don't teach them every word that they learn it from context. They learn it by hearing, they learn it by listening, they learn it by practice. So that's one comment I had. And of course, because I guess you didn't have a chance to talk a lot about the EkStep platform, my question really is around how do we evaluate the success of EkStep and the progress that it's making. And maybe you've already done that, but certainly that's a question that remained with me. One area where I felt there could be more work probably in both the presentations is tools for illiterate parents. And I say this with a little bit of emphasis because it's challenging, of course, because they're illiterate, but parents are really the most vested in their own children's education, more than teachers, more than systems, more than us. And yet we don't have too many examples of tools that parents can use, for example, to understand where is their child really on the reading spectrum. Is there a game that they could just hand over on their mobile to children to play with, and then at the end they get a color-coded image of where their child is, like Carrie had color-coded graphs on red, yellow, and green. Where is their child on that? And that could be a reading game. So I think the more tools we can put in the hands of parents, that would be useful. Carrie definitely emphasized African languages and the fact that there is very little content. And actually, I think this is something that the entire reading community we've failed. We've actually failed children in Africa and certainly children in India as well, is we just have not produced content in their languages. And it's the most obvious and glaring gap in reading work. And I think there's something that needs to be completely rethought here. And then the other final comment I want to make is around motivation and attitude toward reading. This is central. How do you get? So my question is, how do we integrate that aspect of motivation into these tools that you've shared or the platform that you've shared? A lot of the content I'm seeing is didactic. And didactic content is very hard to sometimes motivate children to keep reading. And so this is where maybe I can take 30 more seconds to just share that what we have tried to do is work on content that people already like and then try to build reading and assessment into that. So, for example, what we've tried to do is integrate reading into Bollywood songs on television, which people watch basically 1 billion people watch in India every day. Or we've tried to create animated stories for children. Again, children all over the world like to watch cartoons. And we also know that when they are subtitled in the same language, let's say the narration, then children like to read along. So I think somewhere bringing in content into these tools that children already love could be a useful starting point. I'll stop there. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share my views.
Thank you so much, Brij, for your wonderful discussion. And now let's go to Anthony Bloome to hear his closing remarks. Tony, you are welcome.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay? Just now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes,
all right.
I hear you.
Terrific. Well, I'd like to be brief so that there's an opportunity for our two terrific presenters to be able to respond to those great discussion points that Brij had raised, perhaps from other attendees. First of all, I want to compliment both Carrie and Nagaraju for presenting on some really exciting initiatives that's helping us think about innovative, in some cases sort of peer-led or locally-led content creation that can help improve early grade reading activities. And to pick up on Brij's point as well, that the fact that it appears that these applications are principally open sourced, that there would be opportunities for other organizations and individuals to be able to add content to build upon them. So I think just to keep my questions brief or my comments brief, so there's the scale of the activity itself in terms of adoption by users, but then also by Ministry of Education, just as a vehicle for being able to help disseminate good practice products. So my first question would be that there's both references in the two presentations for how these activities have been incorporated or picked up by Ministry of Education. Carrie, it sounded like some of the activities that you spoke about are carrying on beyond the lifetime of the USAID project. And I wonder if you could just elaborate on what that looks like in terms of how the Ministry of Education are helping take those activities further that you mentioned in Zambia. And Nagaraju, I did see in one of your slides you had mentioned in terms of the e-content platforms been picked up by a number of Indian states. If you can also elaborate on this really important element of how ministries of education are integrating these activities into their mainstream programming. and how that is then helping the scale of these initiatives. I think I'll stop there just in the interest of time and to allow possibility for response and, again, input from other participants on the webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tony, for your brief closing remarks. And now we are going to the question and answer session. Some questions may be directed to specific speaker, and some questions may be general for any one of the speakers to answer. So I'll be throwing them to you as they come in, but it will be limited by our time. And the first question here goes to Carrie. The question says, Carrie, are any of the 3 tools you described from EDC available for youth outside EDC and adaptation to the other language context? That's one question for Carrie. Let me get at the second, if there's any, before you go to it. That is only one question I can see is coming from Katie Camillus. Carrie?
Yes. Can you hear me?
1 minute? Yes.
Okay. So we're working on, adapting our Stepping Stone software so that it's available for outside use. Right now, it is primarily an EDC product that we're using to develop programs on. And I think a similar question came from some of Brij's remarks about who's developing the content and whether children are able to develop the content. So I just wanted to address that a bit. The content, and to clarify, the content for both Stepping Stone, and it's the same software. The Stepping Stone software develops the mobile learning content and is also the app maker for the Vernacular on tablets. And right now, all of that content had been developed by EDC in the Time to Learn project, the USAID-funded Time to Learn project. And there was quite a bit of back work that had to go on in order to develop it. There was a lot of, we were working with languages that had an orthography, but we had to develop language schedules and identify vocabulary that was grade specific. We engaged an artist to develop local art. So all of that work then came together, and then we looked at what the ministry was doing as far as their Standard 1, Standard 2, Standard 3 literacy instruction, and tried to peg the activities toward the mechanics of reading at the early stages, and then some reading practice, comprehension, fluency later on as they move on in Standard 1. So that material, the content is developed, right now has been developed by us and then loaded for use. The videos on best practices are videos that we did in conjunction with the Ministry of Education, identifying teachers that understood the practice and that could be recorded, and we edited them and loaded them. So just to go back, the tools right now are not available and outside of EDC, but we are working on moving that forward, and the content has been produced. But I think that with our work collaborating with the ministry, there is an opportunity to build upon that so that the ministry is able to develop their own content. And just also going back to the comment about netbook dependency, that is another item, since as netbooks are sort of moving out of the fray of use and tablets are becoming more ubiquitous, we're looking at adapting that so that it's available on tablets.
Thank you very much, Carrie, for addressing that question. We have another question, and is coming from one of our attendees. Is on cost effectiveness. Assume that cost of learning to read will be constant at all stages of learning to read. Some evidence that can be very cheap at early stages, but learning slows is harder at later stages of learning to read. Can we figure out how much it costs to get fluent reader with good comprehension, adaptation to other languages or contexts? I think any one of you can address that, and if the time allows, we will answer the other one, but I don't see it allows. Maybe we can hear from Nagaraju. Hello. Hello, Carrie. Nagaraju. Can you hear me?
I'm here.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay, maybe we go for Nagaraju first. Have you heard the question?
Thank you, Alex. There were a couple of questions that came up. One is what Brij has talked about, the adoption of where EkStep currently is, and two, about certain issues about certain clarifications that he had actually provided about how Indian languages are different from English in terms of reading. So I just want to make a couple of comments on that. One, he's absolutely right, Brij's point that Indian languages, once you know how to read the script, it actually is very easy because the scripts are very, very phonetic. I mean, what you see is what you hear, and what you say is what you write, unlike in English. In English, you have to learn the spelling and the pronunciation in your mind, because that kind of does not exist. Second, as we have seen in our studies, it's about some 40 or 50 syllables. If the children learn to write, they can actually pick up and start to see most of the script themselves. So in that sense, I thank him for that clarification. And where EkStep is in terms of adoption, we actually went through quite a bit of changes in our journey. Initially, we thought that we would develop very highly engaging games and then directly reach the children. And then we realized that personalization at that scale in India does not work. Then we started to see that actually the context owns the child. So currently, what is happening is that the EkStep platform is adopted as a national teacher platform, and with the state governments adopting and moving all their content. So in another 3 to 4 months, you will see a lot of content. Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and Odisha are the 4 states that are going live initially with the teacher material and teacher-to-teacher material. And with that, in the next couple of years, we hope to reach increase the scale. So those are certain clarifications that Brij has asked. In terms of actually what it takes to build content, very highly engaging content today, is it because platforms like this with HTML5, like again what Kothari was saying, even very simple stories, read-alongs, which are actually very, very simple, which the child already knows, in itself is a tremendous value, because most children, especially from the disadvantaged backgrounds, don't even have anybody to speak to them at home. So they don't even get to know to interact with anybody at a language density. So even immersing them, even in stuff that is available naturally around their environment itself, is a great step. And then I don't really see that very, very highly sophisticated games might actually, the kind of stuff that we have actually seen earlier might probably be useful in environments like India, because the phones, smartphones use low-end phones, the graphics capabilities may not be very high. Parents do not give their tablets or devices to the children. So those issues actually exist. And still, the device tends to be a very, very group communication tool. So therefore, it would be interesting to develop applications which actually enable our children to communicate with each other or learn from each other using the device, rather than isolate them from their environment. And that, I think, would be a great thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nagaraju. And the time to us is very limited. We are getting to an end of this webinar. So I would like to thank you very much, all the presenters and the discussants, also the participants. We were not able to answer all the questions which were posed, but those which ones we have not been answered here, we will answer them and post them in our blog. Once again, I thank you very much for attending to this webinar, and I would like to welcome in our next webinar, which will focus on inclusive education, and this will be in June. And we will announce in our website, in GRIN's website. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.